And welcome, Hoosier fans, to this week's edition of Assembly Call Radio, where each week we discuss the most pressing topics in the ever-anxious world of Indiana basketball. This is our 147th edition of Assembly Call Radio, and it is our 546th episode overall of the Assembly Call, recorded on the evening of Thursday, November 14th, 2019. I am your host, Jerod Morris. And let's begin this edition of the Assembly Call how we begin every edition of the Assembly Call, and that is with our Hoosier Proud banner moment.
And Indiana is the national champion.
When it comes down, Indiana will be champion.
Smart takes the shot.
The Hoosiers have won the national championship.
This week's banner moment occurred at 7:27 p.m. Central Time on Tuesday. That's when loyal ChatMobber and Tonsoni tailgater Richie Carter tweeted the following. Hey, Assembly Call, Archie is having a come-to-Jesus meeting in the huddle with the team. Arms are flying and the tie has been ripped off and thrown into the crowd. Cabby from Green and I are enjoying this in person. It didn't take many sideline shots on Tuesday night to know that Archie wasn't happy with what he was seeing from the Hoosiers. In fact, you probably didn't need any sideline shots. All of us who watched the bench or watched the defense and careless turnovers in the first half could see that the Hoosiers had brought their C- game to the arena. Against better competition, Indiana might have dug itself a massive early hole, like the ones we got accustomed to seeing last year. And that's why seeing Archie blow a gasket, and more importantly, seeing his team respond to it, was so encouraging. Archie himself has admitted that he allowed too much substandard play to go on last season. He's mentioned that the awful home performance against Nebraska was a point at which he should have said enough was enough. But he didn't, and the poor starts and inconsistent play snowballed until he got fed up after the Minnesota game. The Hoosiers responded to play much better basketball thereafter, leaving everyone, including Archie, to wonder what might have been. And so that's why I was happy to see Archie in Game 3 not letting bad habits and lackadaisical play go unchallenged and uncorrected. This IU team is talented enough to beat North Alabama with a C- performance, but that kind of play won't cut it come late November and onward. Archie knows this, and it seems he learned an important lesson from last season that is already bearing fruit this year. That's an encouraging sign for this young IU team, and it's an encouraging sign for this young IU coach. All right, now let me introduce my esteemed co-host for this week's show. Ryan is off tonight. As you may have heard, he had to be up early this morning for a 5 a.m. radio show, so obviously fulfilling his weekly commitment here to be with us on Thursday night was just too much.
I just want to go lay in bed.
And as you may also have heard, the fall temps in San Diego have dropped all the way down to the mid-60s.
I thought I was going to die.
So please, keep Ryan in your thoughts and prayers in hopes that he gets a warm, comfortable night of rest. Andy is also off tonight, spending some time with his daughters since he will be hosting the post-game show on Saturday.
This overly super involved dad.
Ryan's being stupid again.
But enough about those two who are not here with us. To paraphrase a beloved coach, my team is on the mics. And speaking of beloved coaches, to my left.
He remembers the days when a movie cost $1. Heaven help you if you ever decide to pop your collar. Play hard, but remember, fake hustle is a crime. He's the coach and it's Tonsoni time.
Coach, assuming that the frigid pipes of your internet are cooperating with us, what's on your mind?
Yeah, apologize for the Wi-Fi issues and the choppy audio. We'll check that out. But, Indiana basketball is 3-0. It's a new team. I'm going to keep saying patience. There's some things that we're going to talk about that are not looking so well. The defense, the ball screen defense, some of those things. But Archie is experimenting. He has said so that the first halves were going to be scripted, different lineups. I saw some trapping that I haven't seen before on a half court that didn't really go well. You do that when you can so that you can get stuff on film, analyze whether you want to continue doing stuff. And so we have to be a little bit patient with that, despite some of the concerns. Still 3-0 and more basketball to come.
And to my right, straight out of the ChatMob, which, by the way, he has been privately lobbying to have rebranded as the ChadMob. He's a man with an intimidating last name who isn't afraid to speak truth to Ryan.
You know what? I'm working like 3 jobs here, Chad.
And he has a life goal that I think we can all get behind.
I will deliver a pizza to that door right behind him.
He is the host of the new IU basketball show Hoosier Morning After. It's General Chadwick Schwarzkopf. Chad, what are your opening thoughts on the last week in IU basketball?
Well, if you kind of listen to it, say ChatMob, ChadMob, ChatMob, ChadMob, it kind of sounds alike. Chat and chat has always been kind of something that sounds similar growing up. I've had the same thoughts that kind of Coach opened up on. I mean, we have to look at this November as kind of a workshop month for this team. This is the time to try things. We had a lot of questions about this team going into the summer, how many different lineups, how deep it was, and these games allowed us to experiment with that and kind of figure out what we could do with those games. I mean, just look at it. The last game we had, the player with the least amount of minutes was 13 minutes. So that shows that he's playing a lot of different guys. He's trying to figure things out. We don't have things figured out. We don't need to beat guys like Ohio State is Villanova by 30 points. Those guys have the answers already. We're still trying to figure that out, and it'll come. And we've got some answers. We've got some things that are making us excited, but other things we'll just kind of figure out. And like you said, we figured it out and we've gotten 3 wins. So that's pretty good.
All right, here is what we are going to talk about this week. We'll run through some Hoosier headlines like we always do, and then we're going to take some time and address the concerns about the defense and provide a brief refresher also about some of the key things this team is missing without Devonte Green, because 2 of them are defensive, and that's, I think, one of the reasons why we can expect that the defense will improve as we move forward here. And finally, after that, we'll answer some questions. Tons of good ones submitted. No way we'll get to all of them in segment 3, so we'll definitely have a little AC After Dark answering some questions afterwards. All right, all of that coming this week on Assembly Call Radio. Before we get to all that, though, let's talk about tickets, because you have a lot of options when it comes to where you get your sports tickets. And this isn't really an industry that is known for its growth, innovation, and customer friendliness. But with millions of live event tickets and a price match guarantee, SeatGeek proves that there's a better way. They built the fastest way to find tickets so that you can stop searching for the perfect seat and instead start enjoying it. Just look at the App Store. SeatGeek has over 50,000 5-star reviews, and the reason is because they deliver a better process for buying tickets. SeatGeek pulls together millions of tickets from all over the web, and then they rate each deal on a scale of 1 to 10 with a color-coded system to show the value. Green dots mean good deals, red dots are overpriced. Then they display the tickets on an interactive seat map so you can see right where they are. And every purchase is fully guaranteed, so you can shop for tickets with confidence. I have the SeatGeek app on my phone because it's by far the fastest and easiest way to find tickets. We bought our Zach Brown concert tickets there earlier this summer. We really want to go see Hamilton because it's coming to Fort Worth, and I've already looked on there. I'm scoping tickets out on there. They have Hamilton tickets on SeatGeek, so sports, concerts, live event, whatever you want, SeatGeek has it. And I use it, which is why I can recommend it to you.
Can a brother get some coupons?
Of course. Best of all, SeatGeek will give you $10 off your first SeatGeek purchase. All you need to do is use our promo code. So download the SeatGeek app today and use the promo code ASSEMBLY for $10 off your first purchase. That's promo code ASSEMBLY for $10 off your first purchase. All right, guys, let's roll through a few headlines, kind of, non-game headlines. And the biggest one to me, Coach, is we got 3 signatures, 3 guys signing on the dotted line for the class of 2020. Obviously, we're awaiting the decision of Dawson Garcia, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But Trey Galloway, Anthony Leal, Jordan Geronimo, they are signed and sealed, ready to go for next year. Look, we're all kind of waiting to see if anybody's going to be added to that class. But all 3 of those guys are guys that I think we can be excited about. They're going to be building block type players for this program. And so it's always good to get those signatures on the dotted line once November comes around.
Yeah, and those guys are again what I believe to be true Archie Miller guys. Some length, some athletic ability, some shooting. They'll have to come in and learn what college basketball is about next season over the summer and then at the beginning of the next season. But again, it gives what we are seeing now is some depth. It will continue to add to that depth, and it's always exciting when people say yes and sign, and they're definitely coming. So yeah, that's a big headline.
Yeah, along with those guys now, that just to hop in, the pride that they have in the name across their jersey is what's awesome to see. I mean, Anthony argues, or even says that many times when he comes along. Jordan Geronimo signed almost immediately or committed immediately after visiting because he was so amazed by what he saw. So that's the excitement too. That culture is continuing to build on what we already see changing this year. So yeah, just more up and up for us.
How about Anthony Leo? I think I saw on social media direct admit into the Kelly School of Business. we focus on ball screen defense and offense and all that all the time, but the complete person, I think that we're getting in a lot of these young men, and that academically right there is pretty impressive from our recruits as well.
Agreed. So, now Indiana waits to see what Dawson Garcia is going to do. He told Tipton Edits that he is going to announce on November 20th. He announced a Final Four: Indiana, Marquette, Memphis, and Minnesota. I haven't talked to anybody that thinks that Memphis and Minnesota really has a legit shot. It seems like it's coming down between, Marquette and Indiana, but, when you're hearing that second and third and fourth hand, you never quite know, but that's the expectation. So we'll wait to see. He took the Marquette visit last week, didn't commit right away. So it certainly seems like he and the family are going to, kind of weigh the options. And, we're less than a week away from that. So we'll kind of wait to see. I guess the one question, Chad, the hypothetical, if, and someone actually asked this question, which was, if Dawson Garcia makes the wrong decision, because we all know what the right decision would be, what is Indiana going to do after that? And we don't know for sure. There's not really anybody else like an immediate target. Is there anything that in the event that happens, is there anything that you would like to see Archie do?
I would like to not see him go after another one. I mean, adding that fourth person puts us in kind of a sketchy position with what scholarships we'll have and everything. So I think we've already have a pretty good front court that'll be returning. We will only be losing unless someone gets hot and decides to go to the NBA early. We'll only be losing Deron Davis down below. That'll just be another year for guys like Race and guys like that to get even better. It'll be senior year for Justin Smith. I don't see any need to go after anyone just to fill up a body. I think we'll be fine.
Yeah. Well, and again, hopefully we don't have to deal with that because Dawson makes the right decision. So choose wisely, young Garcia. Last topic here for the headlines, not necessarily a Hoosier headline, but a Big Ten headline. And as we've talked about, Coach, if you're an Indiana fan, you really need to pay attention to what's happening in the Big Ten and the non-conference because it makes a big deal. How do these Big Ten teams do? What are their rankings and their power rankings? Because come Big Ten play, that kind of dictates whether conference wins or quality wins. And so this is something that we really want to pay attention to. Ohio State obviously went out and got a huge win over Villanova in the Gavitt games. Northwestern recovered from their early season hiccup to beat Providence. That was nice to see. Purdue got a big lead on Marquette and then got demolished in the second half to lose that one. So the Big Ten went 2-1 in the opening slate of Gavitt games. Obviously, we don't know what the results of Thursday will be. But, what stood out to you and what are some of the things that you're watching with the conference during non-conference play from a bracketology perspective?
Yeah, and from I think Iowa and DePaul played on Monday too. Is that
that's
correct?
right. Was that a Gavitt game? Yeah. You're right. And DePaul,
I don't know if that was a Gavitt game or just a regular scheduled, but that was shocking to me. DePaul has been down. They're obviously trying to build back up, but they really won by about 20 points against Iowa. And what concerns me about the Big Ten is the bottom half. If you got more than just the 2 or 3 teams we think are going to struggle, that whole conference, if it's 5 or 6 teams, Minnesota's lost 2 games. Purdue has lost a couple games. They're tough non-conference games. And you really can't judge that. Purdue was 6-5 at one point last year and ended up, tying for the conference championship. So, things like that happen, and we're all so excited about college basketball that after a week you're ready to put a bracketology picture together. But you want the conference to do well because you do not want what happened to the Pac-12 last year where they were awful in the non-conference and then they played each other and they could never get above 2 or 3 teams. So you want the Big Ten. Michigan State's playing right now. Penn State got a win tonight. So yes, that you want that to happen, and then Indiana can go beat them in the Big Ten. I do think Indiana's going to have to pick up quality wins in the conference in order to make the tournament. So that is a concern.
The Iowa DePaul game was Gavitt games, as was Michigan Creighton, and Michigan beat Creighton. So solid start for the Wolverines under their new coach. What are you watching kind of around the conference, Chad? Has anything kind of jumped out and surprised you? That was actually a question that we got from JD, which was, after a few nights of games, what Big Ten team are you at least open to reconsidering your preseason opinion on? Has anyone jumped out to you?
Ohio State is going to be a little bit higher maybe than I thought. They looked pretty good in their games, playing some pretty fast ball. I mean, obviously they played a very good team. So to get a quality win like that early in the season when you're supposedly supposed to be trying to figure things out is always a nice thing to add on your resume.
Villanova gets demolished by the Big Ten. They're lucky they're not in the Big Ten. I don't know if they'd win a game.
But I mean, there were a few shocking losses on the lower end of the Big Ten that you don't want to see. Like Coach said, our resume only gets better with a stronger conference. So hopefully things pick up, and it's just maybe start of the season jitters for some of those lower teams, and things will get kind of evened out when we get into the real deep dive of the conference play.
Yep. All right, guys, we're coming up. Let's talk about defense, because according to Indiana's own coach, the defense has not been up to standard to start this season. It's been subpar. What specific areas are causing Indiana the most trouble, and are there reasons to expect the D to improve in time for December? We're going to talk about it. Stick with us on the Assembly Call. All right. Hello to everybody watching live. Good to see you all here. Man, it's that time of the season. Banner Monday, post-game show on Tuesday or Wednesday, AC Radio on Thursday, post-game show on the weekend. Heather was like, is there anything to talk about? She's like, oh, yeah, it's the season. Yeah. Although, I'll give Jay, when he was submitting his mediocre question of the week, said there have literally been 3 full shows since last Thursday. It feels like everything has already been talked into the ground. Welcome to the regular season.
Usually on fire.
It's all right. We try to give different perspectives on stuff. Look at it from different angles. I gave you credit for your bit, Jay. Don't.
Yeah, he's now mediocre commenting in the chat mob.
we gotta get a shirt. We need home field apparel to make
kidding.
a shirt.
Just mediocre. Just
mediocre.
Right in cream and crimson for Jay.
Mm-hmm. Hey,
I'll tell you something
all...
that's not mediocre is Jay's man cave. He sent me pictures and invited me. I got to go down and watch some games with him. He's got a great man cave, IU man cave, and TVs all over the place. So that he just kind of acts mediocre at times.
I've seen pictures of it. It is anything but mediocre. That is
Jay,
for sure.
Jay, have you tweeted that out? I want to see that. Has he put pictures up?
I don't know. I don't know if I saw him on Twitter or if he sent them to me, but it's impressive. It's definitely the kind of place that you would want to watch March Madness. I'll give him that. Hey, show of hands in the chat and here. Who's going to the Hoosier Hysterics event? Obviously, I can't because I am unable to fly out this weekend. Coach, you're not going to be there, are you?
I can't. I got practice till 10 and then post practice conversation. So I'm going to be down in Bloomington for the game. But I don't know what time my arrival will be.
And IU Penn State is what, noon? Is that a noon game?
Noon,
or is it 11?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It's noon.
Yeah,
11
so
your
it's
time.
11 my time. Man, what are we thinking about that? Are you going into that game with legitimate hope?
Troy or Penn State?
Well, I'm really disappointed that you had to ask that.
I'm going in with blind optimism. I mean, come on. We'll see.
Here's my take, and I've come a long way because I've been skeptical with IU football for a long time after kind of growing up and seeing it live in college and loving it. I think we'll compete.
You were there for the good years.
I was there for the real good years, Anthony Thompson and all of that, and 6 bowls in 8 years. And then it just hasn't been there for 20-some years. And so you just get into that narrative of something bad's going to happen. And I don't like being part of that narrative. So I'm trying to push myself out of that and be more positive. So I see 7-2 as great, but boy, we need to beat someone that's pretty good. That's just been the 20-year narrative. But I think we're going to go in and compete. I don't know that we can win. I think Penn State's going to be a little angry after the Minnesota loss. Playing at Penn State, been there a couple times, 2-3 times to see games. It's just an incredible atmosphere. And, we won at Nebraska. But I think this Penn State team's really, really good. I think Indiana's good. But I think they cover. I think it's a 14.5. 14 and a half.
14 and a half.
I think we'll beat the spread for sure. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's interesting because the IU football fan base obviously is always expecting the next bad thing to happen. That's just, been conditioned over decades to feel that way. And the only way for Indiana to really win is to get a coach with enough force of personality and good enough at bringing in the right people to overcome that. And that's the nice thing about this team is it doesn't seem like they're waiting for the next chance to make a play. And that's what you have to do to overcome just the weight of IU football on your shoulders. And that's why this team is fun to watch. Like, they're undisciplined at times and they make mistakes and they've got some talent deficiencies at certain spots. But man, the roster's better and they've just got playmakers and they believe in their coach.
And it's fairly young.
And they're young.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, for all – and I tell you the thing about Allen that impresses me. And, Coach, you and I have talked about this. When you're a coach – you want to use your timeouts well and you want to make sure that guys don't have penalties. But the two most important things are develop culture and hire the right people. He's good at that, man. He is good at that. So, get that stuff done. You can overcome some of the other stuff.
He's good at a lot of things. And I've been slow to jump on his bandwagon. I don't like the promotional LEO and breakthrough. And I think some of that stuff backfires a little bit when you put it out as a marketing campaign. And I don't know if that's Coach Allen's fault or that's the marketing department doing a little too much with his words. I love those words for in the locker room and for team building and togetherness within the team.
It gives you some differentiation on the recruiting trail too. It's a brand that you can sell to people.
Yeah, it does. But I don't see top programs, coaches going out there. And
but we're not a top program. That's the thing.
Yeah. All right.
Maybe
you're probably right.
It
would be a different tone to the conversation if they were 2-6 instead of what they are.
Well, you had breakthrough and you went 5-6 and didn't go to a bowl after 2 years, and then you had finish and you didn't finish, and you run the risk as a coach when you put that stuff out there public. The Purdue poster up here was when they went to a bowl game, and then this is a real breakthrough. You just set yourself up. If you take those in locker room, inside program things and make them too public, trust me, we've all done that. I made in my first couple of years some stupid public comments about there's a new sheriff in town because we won't beat our rival, and that got plastered all over our county. And
I want these.
I'm not a hypocrite. Oh, that was dumb, man. I was so excited. We won a big game, and we had to turn around and play in the next night in a championship, and we got smoked by 15. And I heard it. Oh, new sheriff in town. Yeah,
I'm seeing a picture of Coach with a big 10-gallon hat on or something like that. Or maybe a cartoon,
from a football
cartoon.
Yeah. From a football aspect, Coach Allen's what you want. He loves Indiana. He wants to make it well. He has a good together, tight-knit group. Honestly, those are really, really good things. And it's just taken him 3 years to get there. And it's a reason why you need to be patient in coaching and programs.
I've been happy that
good job.
It's been a coach that loves the players, and that's kind of always been something that IU has had. Mallory was always one that loved the players. They no matter what we were doing or what was happening on the floor, he always loved those guys out there and was a father figure and stuff to them. My family, we grew up. I grew up in Bloomington, and my family, we used to have Mexican every Tuesday night, I think it was, and the Mallorys were one of the groups, part of the group there. And Bill was always just such a great guy. He's a very personal guy, and he would love, if he was here, he'd love to see this. He'd be thrilled.
Oh yeah, no question about it.
Hey Chad, one of the best things about the football season is meeting your dad at the tailgate.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
That was awesome.
Yeah. He was excited to see that. I definitely want to try to get up there for something.
That's awesome. All right. Well, that was my way of delaying having to talk about this defense. But I guess segment 2 beckons and we need to talk about it, huh? So, Coach, I'll kind of open this up and kick it to you so you can introduce some of this because you did some film study on it, and then we'll just kind of bat it around. If that works.
That'll work.
All right, here we go. And that, by the way, that first segment was only 16 minutes, so we got some time. We can explore the studio space here with this segment and still have 13, 14 minutes for the next one. So here we go. Okay.
This is Verdell Jones. What's better than an epic buzzer beater? The full court dribble and a perfectly placed pass to set it all up. And of course celebrating with Hoosier Nation afterwards. So join Jerod, Andy, Ryan, and Coach on the assembly call after every IU basketball game. Go Hoosiers.
Thank you, Verdell. Welcome back to the Assembly Call. You can find all of our content at our website, assemblycall.com. And if you ever want to join the chat mob during our unedited live broadcasts or watch those replays and see all the between segment banner, then check out our YouTube channel, youtube.com/assemblycall. I am Jerod Morris, here with Chad Schwartzkopf and the coach, Brian Tonsoni. And guys, let's talk about the defense because, one of the biggest storylines, the most prominent storylines after the first three games has been subpar defense, to the point where the coach, in the last two press conferences has really called out his team for not playing good defense. And he's basically said, hey, if the defense doesn't get better, they are going to have a rude awakening, once they play, some tougher competition. And I think, the coach is echoing what a lot of us have seen. And I think when you juxtapose some of the defensive struggles early in these three games with a lot of the offseason talk about, hey, could this be a top 20 defense? Is this team going to, experience the year 3 bump in the pack line and all the things that we kind of thought we would see? It's a little bit concerning. Now, we don't want to overreact to it, but let's kind of take this opportunity to break down what the issues are and whether or not there are legitimate reasons to think that they can get corrected sooner rather than later. So, Coach, as we talked about on a few post-game shows, a couple of them really stand out, and I know you did some film study for your Coach's Corner segment inside of our private community. Why don't you, kind of lead this off and talk about the biggest issues that you're seeing with the defense?
Well, number one, the defense on the ball in a variety of situations has been below average, and that causes all kinds of problems for a defense. And if you get beat quickly off the dribble where you don't force someone to go, a yard either way, and they get these direct drives, then that puts the team in rotation. And that means that a help defender has to come stop the ball, and then another help defender has to help the helper. And then that anything can happen. And Indiana has found themselves in that position way too much. And the pack line defense is supposed to create a bubble around the lane and make it very difficult for the ball to penetrate the lane. And in the last two games, especially game one, I thought they were a lot better at it, but the last two games, the ball has been directly penetrating. You put some stats in the community about just directly on ball defense and some jump shooting. I looked at ball screen defense in the coach's corner, where the combination of lack of ball pressure and post players not really hedging and carrying out the team strategy correctly, putting the other guys in tough situations for long closeouts and then being driven. And that's a mental recognition problem. And that's just a physical get to where you're supposed to be and do things right. It could be a simple closeout where you're supposed to close out and let the guy drive or force middle, but you're forcing baseline. The guy goes baseline and the help's not where it's supposed to be. And there just seemed in looking back for the coach's corner, there was a lot of the ball screen. We focused on that. Jeff Marlowe, who's in a chat room, post-game chat room, wanted to do that. It just seems like it might be one guy that is off, and then that just creates a mess for the whole team. And good team defense is 5 guys versus the ball moving in connection with each other. And right now, Indiana is just not doing that to the level that they need to compete for the December and the Big Ten conference schedule.
And Chad, one point that I've heard you make, and that I think is a good one, that a lot of people have made is, it's important to keep all of this in context because the defense, it has struggled. And again, Archie has been the one kind of leading this parade about the defense not being up to par. But, there are some reasons to kind of explain it. And you don't want to make excuses. You never want to excuse poor effort. You never want to excuse lackadaisical play, lack of focus. And there has been some of that. But we're also playing lineup combinations that we're probably not going to see a lot this season. Rob Finney hasn't been at full strength, when he's been out there. Obviously Devonte Green hasn't played at all, which we're going to get to. So, there are some of these things that we've seen that I think do explain some of the struggles that as they normalize over the next few weeks, that should help the defense. And if some of the other stuff comes around with, some of the focus and the reasons why Archie was mad during the game, those things kind of coming back together, I think we'll start to see this defense play more cohesive and play better.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a matter of the rhythm, getting into the rhythm of it as well. I mean, a lot of the games and a lot of the struggles we've had defensively, we've seen it mostly in the first half. The team at least has shown that they can take some criticism, take a little bit of chewing out maybe from Mike Roberts or whoever it be at halftime, and they come out a little bit more aggressive. Speaking of all of our 4 games that we've been able to see, including our exhibition game, we had 12 steals. Then next game, we had 6 steals, then 4 steals, then 6 steals this past game. If you kind of go back and kind of litmus test, look at them just watching with the naked eye at these different games, the exhibition game, we were a lot more aggressive. Guys were digging on guys when they had it in the baseline. We were up on them a lot more than we have been in these past couple of games. I don't know if that's a matter of us getting into that aggressiveness from the bat, but there has been a lack of attention to that from the start and consistency with that aggressiveness.
Yeah, and a point that was made in the chat, and that's a good one, is there have been some of these lineups. You have 3 or 4 guys that are playing their first year in the pack line defense: Armand Franklin, Trace Jackson Davis, Jerome Hunter, Race Thompson. I mean, those guys have been, some of those guys have been around, Joey Brunk, but they may be playing their first year in this defense. But let's hold that thought because I want to come back to it. But Coach, one of the things that we've talked about on the postgame show and that has been most concerning to me is, one of the biggest culprits on a lot of the defensive issues has been Al Durham. And, look, he's a guy who, you look at, just the eye test watching him last year, the metrics, he was a good, solid defender. A guy that we talked about, usually did a pretty good job on the ball, would, kind of get lost a little bit sometimes when he was being run off screens, but was still a guy that we all had confidence in from a defensive standpoint. We've mentioned numerous times on the postgame show, specific instances of him not being able to contain the ball, getting screened and not being able to fight through a screen, and just looking at some of the numbers, they're not good. And, one thing that I saw, Coach, and I don't know if you saw this toward the end of the game, was, and this is toward the end of the North Alabama game, is it looked to me like Al was limping a little bit and kind of, reaching for the back of his leg. And look, we know that he was dealing with an injury as recently as a couple of weeks ago, and had to miss a little bit of time. And to me, I would not be surprised if he's not 100%. And I don't know. I've tried to find this out and I can't get confirmation on it. And, he's not a guy who's going to make excuses. And we know Indiana's never going to really be, fully forthright with a guy who's, who may be injured. I think he may be dealing with something physical because he doesn't seem to be moving as well as he usually does. And that would explain some of the issues that he's had because, we all love Al. Al has not been good on defense so far this year. That doesn't mean he isn't a good defender. And I think getting him back to 100% along with Rob and, of course, along with Devonte is really going to help. And, seeing that in the second half of the North Alabama game, and I don't know if anybody else saw it, but it kind of made sense for why he may be struggling a little bit with some of this stuff on defense.
I'm not going to dismiss that as a possibility because if you're not at 100%, you're probably not going to play to your best ability on defense. But if anyone's been hurt and has that excuse, it's Rob Phinisee, and his numbers so far this season are a lot better than Al's numbers. And Phinisee had the lower abdominal thing where he didn't even practice for 4 weeks, and we're counting on him to make big stops in these games to turn momentum around. So I don't know that I do understand the injury situation, but I think it's more of just out of position. And we think of position basketball or the 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 on offense, but there's also a spot where you guard the best on defense. And I think a lot has been asked of Al, and he's done a really good job filling in with our starting 2 guards hurt. Al probably, if he is a starter, would be at the 3. And guarding a 3 is going to be different than guarding a point guard. And it could be possibly easier for Al to guard at the 3 or even the 2 to some extent. So I think that to me is more, there's a lot on the plate right now for the point guard, running the show on offense, getting back on defense, setting the defense, guarding someone who's probably the quickest member of the opposing team. So I think he's just going through some struggles as he has been heaped on a lot of responsibility. And that has to change for him to continue to be productive defensively. And I'm not trying to excuse that, but I think that's more, to me, what's wrong with Al's defense than it is the possibility. And I think that goes right down the line. I think the question for me and the criticism, I can't criticize Archie because everyone knows how I feel about Archie, but I'm not a big proponent of this big lineup from a defensive standpoint. I think our fours are struggling to guard the stretch fours. And then when you get into some situations where you might have to help and X out, you find yourself a big on a 2 and you can't guard that as well. I just think we're better with Justin at the 4 and Race at the 4. Even Race is struggling guarding the bounce some from his position. So I just think it's a technique, and practice is so hard, guys, as a coach to simulate that. You know, in practice, we have basically 4 post players going 5-on-5. How do you set up practice where you have 4 quick guys out there to simulate? And that's Archie's job. He's got to get it done. But it just comes down to having lots of reps, lots of game reps. And again, it's early in the season to get overly concerned. But I think all of that does play a role in where we're at defensively.
Yeah, you know, and look, there could be a little bit of noise in some of the early numbers. You know, Indiana's absolutely getting killed on jump shots right now. There have been 31 jump shot attempts that where basically Al, Rob, or Armand have been the defender on. And on those 31 attempts, 54 points have been scored, which is 1.74 points per possession, which is an insane number. For context, last year, Indiana gave up 829 points on 916 jump shots. That's 0.905 points per possession. And I think there's a couple things. Like, we've seen some poor closeouts, and we've seen some on-ball defense that isn't close enough and competitive enough. And so, you know, guys have been a little bit too comfortable to make some tough shots. And there's also been kind of some tough shots made. So I think it's probably, again, I think there's some noise in the numbers, some issues just with lineups, coach, and guys playing a little bit out of position, and just some improvements that guys need to make, you know? And so I think all of those things kind of explain what we've seen, and to a certain extent, it's been a perfect storm. But the other thing also is, Chad, I think people are getting a little tired of, like, you know, explaining it and like all the context and the nuance. And it's like, when are we just going to play top 20 defense? You know, we were promised a defensive program, a program that's going to hang its hat on defense. Why are we dealing with these issues 3 games into season number 3? And I get that. And I think that's why we all would like to see, coming out in this Troy game, this team coming out, you know, with the lunch pails and the hard hats on and digging in and playing some real good defense. And hopefully whatever Archie said to them in the last game gets through, and we start to see a little bit more of that, even from some of the young guys, you know, because that ultimately is what we need to see. That's what's going to create sustainable success under Archie Miller. You know, some of the offensive stuff, there's a little bit of fool's gold that's happened offensively so far this year. This team's got to play hard-nosed defense for 40 minutes to be as good as we think they can be.
I'm going to be looking very closely at the first half of the Troy game. Whatever was said, again, taking off his sport jacket and yelling at them at halftime during the Alabama game, they came out while they shot really well in the first half and only made 5 field goals that whole second half. I remember kind of looking halfway towards the end of that half, and I was shocked that they only scored 11 points. So our defense got a lot better. And again, there's inexperience. Armand Franklin, while he has done very well for us, we still got to remember this is his first year in this team and in this squad. There's little mistakes that you see from the eye that will get cleaned up and everything. And Coach, maybe you can talk to this. Al, probably part of his bad numbers, and maybe it's part of the injury that we've been talking about, but there were numerous times where he would come down to help and he would lose his man, and then a ball would get passed out to him. Is that something more of the pack line? Is he helping too much on that? Or do you think it's just a matter of him losing his spot?
The best thing any team can do is make good help decisions on defense. Bad help decisions put you in rotation. And Chad, I think you're right that, you know, you find sometimes as a coach, players trying to do too much, which then make it look really bad. And again, not trying to find excuses here. But I do think some of that is the case. You know, you do have Armand playing first college basketball. We thought he would play 8 to 12 minutes. He's playing 26 minutes and learning on the fly. You have Rob, who's the best defensive player, not playing. And at some point, we can't sit here and just say injuries. This is a multi-year problem. It's just the guys on the floor have got to play better. Yeah. But I will say from a coach's standpoint, too, you do look at stats and you do look at the analytics, but there's there's stories within the stats. Like there were 2 possessions where Archie was trying to trap. I don't think it worked well. So that hurts your points per possession and your defensive efficiency, but he got it on film. He's going to evaluate it as his coaching decision. There are games that we call certain things at certain times, so we can go in at halftime and say, did this work? Did this not work? Here's what we want to eliminate. And that may throw the stats out of sync, right? And you don't want to play around and experiment too much and lose a game. But in November right now, when you have new players and you have new things, and so if, for instance, in that North Alabama game, the guards were getting open, the drives were there. So I wonder if Archie said, let's try something to see if we can't shut that down and put that in our toolbox for later, that if we are having a bad start, we could go here. Well, then that didn't work. And then go to that. You do have that flexibility, and that's where a 3-game stretch of numbers does start telling you some patterns, but it's not the complete story within what we do in the locker room and film study in preparing the team. It's just like the Ken Palm, all that, and the net, that all has to wash out after 10 to 15 games to really get a true indication of whether this team is playing well or not.
And I think it's important to be clear that, at least for me, like what I've seen over 3 games, I'm not overreacting to it to the point where I'm changing my expectations or what I think this team can be. I still think this team can be a top 20 defense, so don't get me wrong, but there have been more concerning possessions and stretches on defense than I was expecting to see through 3 games. And, we're here. Those are the only data points that we have, so that's what we're analyzing right now. But I think we're all in agreement that there are a lot of reasons to think that, when we have the benefit of hindsight 2 months from now, we'll look at this and say, okay, we really struggled for XYZ reason, but boy, when we, some of these other things happened, we started to play better. And, Coach, one of the things that I think is really going to help is getting Devonte Green back. And I think it is easy to forget about the things that he provides, because obviously there are some things, some struggles that he has that are, very obvious and that have frustrated people. And it's just easy to kind of forget about a guy when he hasn't been out there on the court. But there are a few things that I want to point out that I'm not sure everybody realizes that he's really good at that are going to help this team. And 2 of them are defensive. One is, and Coach, this is to your point, where Indiana has struggled defensively, the ball screen defense and isolation defense. Indiana's guards have not been good at that. Devonte Green last year in 78 possessions of ball screen defense or isolation defense gave up 53 points. That's 0.68 points per possession. It's outstanding. It's in like the 80th, 90th percentile, and it was the best on the team. He struggles as a help defender. He's not always where he's supposed to be in those situations, but put him on the ball one-on-one against somebody and competing to fight through a screen, he does it. That is really going to help this perimeter defense. He also is a guy, Chad, to your point, that gets steals. He has a steal percentage of 3% for his career. That's really good. He's been nationally ranked in that stat every year. Those 2 things are going to help. Now, he's going to get beat and help and some of those other things, but that is going to help the on-ball defense. And the other thing that I want to mention that is going to be helpful, because I mentioned earlier that some of the offensive success Indiana's had is a little bit of fool's gold. And part of what I mean by that is the defenses that we've played haven't been good enough to put us in the situations where we're really going to struggle. And one of those situations is isolation. The best defenses, the Texas Techs, the Virginias, the Michigans last year, one of the reasons why they were so good defensively is they put offenses in isolation 8, 9, 10% of the time. And most college teams don't have the kinds of guys that are talented enough to just go score against a good defense in isolation. Well, Indiana's offense has been good this season, but only 2% of our possessions have been ISOs, and we only have 2 points on those possessions. So even against these bad defenses, we haven't been good in limited, possessions against, in isolation situations. Devonte last year had a higher isolation scoring efficiency than Romeo or Juwan. So that's the other thing that he's going to bring is when the defense ratchets up, there are going to be ISO situations. I think Jerome is going to be a guy who's going to do well in those, but I think Devonte is going to be the guy that we're going to look to. So I've gotten a couple questions like, is Devonte coming back going to hurt the chemistry of the team, and are we really missing that much? I just want to be crystal clear. Yes, there are specific things we've seen defensively and specific things he brings to the table offensively that this team is missing that is really going to help. And that's why all offseason, Coach, we talked about how he's one of those guys that just does things that no one else on the roster can do. Those are a few of them. And I just think it's important now as we hopefully get him back within the next week or two. That's what he's going to bring back to the table.
I think that speaks for itself. Good Devonte, even average Devonte is our starting two guard, and Rob is our starting point guard, and neither of those two have started a game, and I think that obviously hurts your defense. And I think Devonte, again, the isolation offense is something I think we need to talk more in depth as he sits out a couple more games. There is no one right now that is really going downhill or just rising up and scoring one-on-one against somebody. And we're going to need that. I thought at times in these last couple of games, we've missed that. And the offense has just gotten stagnant at times. And at those times you want to turn to Devonte, and it's nice to have someone go get some options. So that's a great observation. But Devonte doesn't get a lot of credit for his defense, but boy, he's all over. He's getting that dreaded word deflections and steals and all of those types of things when you really sit down and watch Devonte. But anytime you take your two starting guards off the floor, it's going to cause problems throughout. And you mentioned something else that I think Indiana fans need to understand. And I know, the guys at 3-man weave and everything think the love of Jerome Hunter is a little bit overblown. But Jerome Hunter's a basketball player. He's an athlete. He's long. He looks like a basketball player. He's not going to be his best probably till next year when he gets a full year of practice. But he is in a stance. He's sliding hard. When he gets beat, he is flying around defensively. His technique is below average, but I love the way he wants to play defense, and he's long and lean. And then if he can also do that offensive isolation and scoring and just rise up and bang threes, you got a guy that can play on both ends. And I think that's some of the reason too. You got guys that are just getting up to speed defensively. And we all get criticized a little bit for liking Indiana too much and finding excuses. There is no excuse for bad defense. It's all heart and it's all mind. If you can't play defense, go get your popcorn and sit in section G. I mean, that's just the way it's got to be. And so there's no excuse for these first three games. It's despicable, but it's understandable. And that's the point I think we're trying to make.
Spitting mad rhymes, coaches here.
That was great. Chad, why don't you
I'm a
take
defensive guy. You got to play defense. And
I agree with you.
To want to do it a little more, whether you're a new guy or not. Get out there and do it.
Fired up coach. Fired up coach. You got to love it.
Fired up coach is the best. Chad, why don't you take the last word on this?
Just two things to remind you about Devonte Green. He came into IU as a freshman, not even under Archie Miller, saying that he wanted to be a Big Ten all defender. He was hanging his hat on defense. He wanted to be really good defensive player. He didn't come in saying he wanted to make all these highlight reels or anything like that. He wanted to come in and be a defender. And that's what he's shown us. I mean, even last year he has on his resume, he got a steal holding a shoe in his hand. So he's a defender. He likes to do that. His energy and his aggressiveness on the defensive end is going to be something that will be noticeable once he's out there.
All right, so we got that out of our system. Now let's just hope that this team comes and plays better on Saturday. Because now, to your point, Coach, like all of us talking about it and explaining it and all that stuff, like at some point now we've just got to see it. And really, that's got to start pretty soon because eventually 3 games becomes 4 and becomes 5, and you're into habits and trends that are carrying you into the meat of the season. So it really needs to start on Saturday, I think. And so hopefully that's what we see. Hopefully. All right, coming up in our third segment, we're going to answer your questions, including the much-anticipated mediocre question of the week, and then a bunch of other ones. You guys sent in a ton of questions. We'll get to as many of them as we can. Stick with us on the Assembly Call because we're doing that next. All right. Good comments in the chat mob during that too. It's, that like, I feel like this is kind of one of those conversations. Everybody's kind of right. The folks who were saying, hey, it's only 3 games. You're right. The folks who were saying the defense was terrible in the first half of North Alabama. You're right. The people who are concerned, you're right. The people who, so it's one of those things. We just need to see it level out, see what happens. But
what always brings it back to me is what I said at the beginning. He's trying stuff. Coach he's figuring stuff out. So that's going to make the numbers all funky too. I mean, hopefully we can, in Ken Palm, we can look at numbers. We can unclick these first 4 or 5 games and we'll get a reel for the team.
The practice thing is interesting too. Like we've had our first week of practice at our high school team, and we are really pleased with how our guys are guarding the ball. But we're guarding ourselves, So in practice, we had a post-practice breakdown tonight. We're talking about this guy can guard the ball, this guy. Well, our first game's against Kokomo, a big school with athletes. And will that, that first game, we'll probably get beat off the bounce quite a bit. And we can't put anyone out there in our practice. And that's more of a high school problem than a college problem. But yet, if Race is guarding Trace Jackson Davis all day, and then he's got to go play North Alabama, whose 4 is like dribbling like crazy all over the place, that's kind of hard to do in practice. And are the walk-ons that equal? It's a fine problem to have as a coach of how you get that. You just got to go out there. But still, defense. If I had $1, there's one young man. I'm not obviously going to mention names in our program, but I yelled tonight, get in your gap, see both, head on a swivel, get in the gap, see both, over and over and over. And finally, I told Coach Hatcher, I said, that guy's a denial defender. Don't ever put him in the situation where he has to be helped. He's just going to deny someone for his 2 minutes, and then he's going to go back on the bench. And sometimes that's what we do as coaches. The guy can't guard.
That's your job as a coach, is put guys in positions to succeed.
So
I will say, one thing I'm glad that Archie has said in the post-game press conference is, because he's been a little bit negative, especially about the defense. I'm glad that each time he has mentioned how hard it is to get a win and how he told the team that, and really pleased to get a win. I think it's easy for us to be really jaded, like, oh, we're facing the 270th team, we're facing the 300th team, we should win by 25, we should win by 30, and kind of be disappointed by it. And to a certain extent, you never want to play down to the competition, and you want to, you do want to, if Indiana performs as well as they should win these games by 25 or 30. But these are also some of the best amateur basketball players in the world, that you're playing against, even at some of these other schools. And I think that's an important message for the team to hear. Like, it is a win, and you did get a win in all these games. We've won by double digits, and that is something. And we don't often hear the coaches kind of say that in these early games. And I actually think it's an important reality check for the fans as much as it is everybody else. Like, yeah, we want the 30, 40-point victories, but, at the end of the day, you're going out there to get wins, and you're going out there to improve, and, not everything is just about the margin of the final score. So I appreciate the fact that he's kind of mentioning that, because I think it's important to keep in mind as we go through all these games. So anyway, just wanted to say that. So let's hit these questions. Are there any of these guys that jumped out to you besides Jay's that we want to make sure that we get to off the top, so it's on the radio show? Because there's a lot of good ones.
I know in the community when you asked.
Oh, I know one.
Questions. There were really good ones.
Yeah, let's do. Okay, so we're gonna get Bill's is gonna be the one that we're gonna get to, because it kind of piggybacks on what we just talked about. That's the other one that I wanted to get to. We'll get to all of them, but I just want to make sure that we get to those early on. Yeah, so that's
real
what we're
quick,
gonna do.
Jerod. Clayton in the chat mob said, "Coach, how would you scout IU? Seems to maybe a different score on any given night to me, which would make it hard to game plan. Any thoughts?" It depends on, obviously the coach who's playing IU, but I always try to take away 2 best players, because you can't take away everything. And right now it would be, can you stop Finney from driving and distributing the basketball and make him have a tough night? And then I think you got to give attention to Trace Jackson Davis in the post and not let him get many catches, because he obviously has some, moves around the basket. So I would double down on the post. I'm a man-to-man guy. Some teams might zone. You might see Indiana play against some zone to clog the lane in a little bit, and then make adjustments. So that's kind of in general, Clayton, where I would go. But Coach, I like taking away 2 players. You take away 2 players and force number 3, 4, and 5 on most teams to take volume shots. I think you got a chance if you have some ability to match up in most games. And in most of my career, I've been the underdog or smaller schools playing bigger schools. And that was our strategy. Take away the 2 best and hope to heck that you can be in a game in the fourth quarter. And that's been quite successful. But again, that's high school. I have not been part of the college game. So I always say that, and I say that way too much, but I just want to make sure you got to be in your lane. I'm a high school dude, and college is a lot different. But that's where I would do. I think that's a great question, Clayton.
I'd love to see him always double trace, because that means Justin and Jerome's guys coming off of them, and the way they can get hot, or either one of them could be hot. That's fantastic. Leaving them open.
And then, yes, then you get open shots instead of contested shots. And then that can open up to three. And now you got to stretch the floor and you got to make decisions as an opposing coach. Then that's when it becomes tough to play against teams.
That's what I love about this team. Again, compared to last year. Last year, we were the easiest team to scout and plan against. Sag off of Zach McRoberts and Justin Smith and double Romeo and Morgan. There you go. And just keep an eye on that little guy up front.
Yeah, and it just felt like the other guy, I mean, outside of Devonte, of course, who's, ready to be an assassin anytime he steps on the court, the other guys, it's almost like they were waiting their turn and not quite ready to step into some of those moments, or they were overly aggressive, like they just didn't. That's why I think this year will be better. I mean, I think Justin and Al have a better understanding of what their role needs to be offensively. I think, guys like Jerome and Race will come in and really fill important roles. So I think we'll handle that better. Like if they were to defend us like that, Coach, with really taking Rob and Trace, like I think the other guys would be in a better position than they were last year, just with more maturity for some of them and just an offense that is naturally more egalitarian than last year's was. Last year everybody just got used to standing around watching Romeo and Juwan. All right, Let's hop into some questions because I don't want to think about that anymore. It's enough thinking about last year. All right, here we go. Oh, we've got hang on. We have 8:55. We'll start it. Chad, I'll let you know in the chat as the time goes down. We've got 8:55. All right, here we go.
This is Tim Priller, and I never miss an episode of the Assembly Call.
Thanks, Tim. Welcome back to the Assembly Call. I'm Jerod Morris here with Chad Schwartzkopf and the coach, Brian Tonsoni. Remember that you need to be subscribed to our email newsletter. We send out a weekly IU News Roundup, and after every game, we send out a detailed post-game analysis. Text IU to 66866 or go to assemblycall.com. That's IU to 66866 or go to assemblycall.com. Time now for the mailbag. A ton of good questions. They were all submitted via our private IU basketball discussion community, which you can learn more about and join at assemblycall.com/community. Get Coach's weekly Coach's Corner videos, which are fantastic. So, Coach, let's jump into this question. This is from Bill, and it kind of piggybacks on what we talked about in the last segment. How valuable is a defensive scheme that takes over 2 years to incorporate? Is the delay in implementation due to overcomplexity, poor instruction, or low functionality of the plan? As an instructor, I'd be very concerned if my students were failing to grasp the concept. Obviously, he's talking about the pack line defense here. How would you respond to Bill?
Yeah, and I answered him in the community too. It takes a couple years to institute a good defensive culture into a program when you take over from someone who is so different. And so that needs to be some patience there. And within the season too, it takes a few games to get to the level that you want for running any defense. And guarding the ball is very, very difficult in the college game because of the skill level and the athleticism of the college guys. And so what you see a lot of coaches do is play zone to eliminate that and force people to shoot. You see a lot of people do multiple defenses in order to confuse the offense more than actually stop the offense. And then you see some coaches, you just say, okay, we got to play defense, but we'll focus on offense and score 90 and only give up 80 and not be concerned with defense. Archie wants to do it one way. Now that could be disagreed with, and you could say that's a problem, and maybe that's the over complexity of it, that he wants to do it one way with complex ideas, but that's what he wants to do. And when it gets going, it should be really, really good. So I think there's a little bit of level of patience, but I think it's just something that needs to be practiced a lot to be great at. If you want to be average, you don't put a lot of time into it. Archie wants greatness, not just average.
Yep. All right. It is time now for the mediocre question of the week from Jay. Chad, Jay asks, after 3 games, which of your preseason predictions about the team or a particular player do you feel best about, and which one do you feel worst about? He also says, what's one trend you expect to continue throughout the season and one trend you don't expect to last, good or bad? So take that any angle that you want.
I think the one that I take that was a prediction. I'll go the bad first. Get that out of the way. And maybe again, it's just who we're playing. But the one thing that's scaring me a little bit is our 1-2 combo underneath. I think we really kind of was hoping for Duran and Joey to kind of come in and be those solid guys underneath, giving the big minutes for us. But I don't think we've really seen that yet from either of them. Again, once we get into the Big Ten, I think it'll change. They'll be a little bit matched up against bigger guys, be able to bang in with them, and do things a lot better. I mean, Joey's been doing a lot of having a lot of minutes, but he's not showing up as big on the stat sheet. But I believe that might just be a thing if he's doing more McRoberts types of things for us out there. As far as things that are kind of sustaining and staying the same, Rob, I think, is kind of, while he is injured, but he is kind of coming out and showing that he's going to be that leader that we all kind of expect him to be. He, in the last game specifically, came in and kind of calmed the team and refocused us, and was really kind of, as the announcers like to say so many times, was the catalyst of this team. And he is continuing to do that and show that he can be that kind of player for us.
Yeah. Coach, what is it for you? Which maybe preseason predictions do you feel best about, or maybe a trend that you've seen that you expect to continue or not?
I'm going to turn Jay's mediocre question into one of positive. I think Rob's done a good job. He's averaging over 5 assists. He's had some turnovers, but being injured, I was really nervous about his production, and I think he is getting back to normal quicker than I thought he would. So that's a trend in the right direction there. And Trace Jackson Davis has, I think, averaging 8 rebounds and his scoring and free throw shooting. I think that was one of the predictions that Jay asked us about, and we were a little skeptical about how much those averages would be. And I think he's playing better than expected. So, and then we just got to say, free throws. Wow, 76% for the team. That's a great trend, and I think we've talked about the concerning trend possibly with the defense.
I will say one trend that I expect to continue is Jerome and Race being a dynamite combination together. I think those two guys really play well together and complement each other well. And I think, who starts a game, it's important, but, obviously what's more important is who ends the game. But, for this program, let's get off to good starts, for goodness sake. So I think that is important. And I actually like Joey Brunk as a guy who starts and gives you energy, gives you some toughness at the beginning of games. So, and I say that to say, I think Jerome and Race probably are going to be guys coming off the bench for most of the season. And I just think those guys together with Jerome, once he made that first 3-pointer, he has just been so just locked in offensively. I mean, he is just a scorer. The guy is wired to score. He's versatile. I think he's going to be really important for this team in so many different matchups because of what he does. And Race Thompson just comes in and gives you toughness and gives you rebounds. And I think those two guys coming off the bench are going to be huge. And so that's a trend that we've seen, and it feels like each game we've gotten reasons to be more encouraged by each one of them. And again, I know it's only 3 games, and so with Jerome, we've got to make sure that he stays healthy. And obviously with Race, we've got to see what it looks like against more competent big guys. But I've seen enough to really think that early trend is going to continue. Let's go with Patrick's question, Coach. Do you think the offensive improvement is sustainable against better competition? Because Indiana's offensive numbers have been really good. Obviously, the defenses that we've been playing have not.
I think for me, you definitely need Devonte back in order for it to continue to be solid against better teams. I think we've been able to take advantage of size and some quickness inside and some ability to pressure and get some easy baskets against these teams. And that's good for a start. And I do like the free throw numbers. I do like all of that stuff, but we're going to need someone that can break someone down. I think we're going to need Jerome to keep averaging 10 to 13 points a game. He's close to averaging that right now. I think we're going to need those things against the Florida States, the Notre Dames in the non-conference and the Big Ten. So I am a little worried about the stagnant offense sometimes in that big man lineup. And that's my only disagreement with the program is the big lineup is just sludging things down on both sides of the ball. at least from my vantage point here in the recliner.
Coach or Chad, yeah,
I think once we kind of narrow down on the good lineups and we can start building chemistry from those. I mean, like you kind of mentioned before. I mean, my favorite lineup currently right now is involved with Jerome, Justin, Trace, Rob, and eventually Al right now, but will eventually be Green once he's healthy. And once you can narrow it on those, it'll get. The offense will just build from there. Again, Jerome is feeling a little bit better. A lot of those shots are rolling. The bounces are going better for him, and it'll just get better as we continue.
Yeah, and to the point that you made, Coach, I think some of it is sustainable. I think Al's consistent approach offensively, that's been great to see because that's not something he's had, and I think it's a real sign of maturity from him. And I think, we haven't really seen Deron get going offensively, and he's been a major catalyst for this team offensively every year he's been in the program. And we know, the kind of impact that Devonte has. And so I think when he comes back, that's really going to help too. So there are some things like we talked about, they haven't been put in certain situations so far. So you should be wary about that. We'll have to see how they approach that, but they're also going to be getting reinforcements back with Devonte Green. So I think that obviously will help them sustain it as much as they can. All right, that is going to have to do it for us on this week's edition of the Assembly Call. If you want to see us do the show live, join us at assemblycall.com on Thursday nights for the live broadcast of our Assembly Call radio recording. And don't forget to go to assemblycall.com or text IU to 66866 to join our free email newsletter. Special thanks to Bob Thompson for producing a lot of the music that you hear on the show, and thank you for listening. We will be back to talk with you on Saturday after the IU Troy game. Until then,
take it from me, Jordan Halls. Keep your elbow in and your eyes on the rim. And go Hoosiers.
Thank everybody for coming out.
All right, I got to get out of here, folks. Thank you.
All right, so let's hit some of these other questions here real quick. You guys have time, right?
Yep.
Okay, because there are some other good ones. Okay, we hit that one. Okay, so Phil said, Jerome looks like he can fill it up from outside. Justin Smith looks like he could be a star. What will it take to get them over the hump in terms of consistency? I mean, I think with Jerome, it's just reps and being comfortable. I think he's going to be a consistent player, once he just is comfortable back being himself. If you can answer that question for Justin Smith,
I noticed something when I looked back with Justin. He needs to get going early in the game. And the game that he had he tied, I think, his career high for 24 points was the Western Illinois game. The very first point scored on that game was a steal from Justin Smith where he went down and dunked, made a fantastic dunk on the other side. And he had several dunks in that game. Again, maybe that's the competition, but him getting started early allows him to feel the flow, it seems, in the games. Whereas when he struggles and can't find the ball early, I think he just kind of disappears. While he still contributes, he is still kind of doing the off the stat sheet kind of things that you see, playing good defense still and getting a few rebounds. I think for offensive wise, he's got to get involved early.
Yeah,
I think that's a great point.
I think a lot of times we get wrapped up in what his stats were. I didn't think it was a great game by any means for Justin on Tuesday, but I felt like he did some things. And so I don't know if it was just a lack of I don't think it was that lack of engagement for me. And once I started watching the tape again to get some stuff for Coach's Corner, I thought a little bit better about his game. But here's the thing too, that coaches, there are players that you count on and they're consistent. And then there are players that are really good. And when they're going really good, you use them. And when they're not going good, you got to be able to have someone fill in for them. And I think as the year goes on, I think Justin, unless he finds that consistency, will be one of those, shaking pops up. When it's shaken up and it sprays out, you're going to use them. If not, you're going to keep the top on it, and you'll play race or you'll play someone else. And that's what depth affords Archie Miller. But I don't know that you can consistently say he's going to get you 20 points a night and be that go-to guy. I think Devonte's that guy, Rob's that guy, and Jerome, whenever he can get up to speed, will be more likely to be those kinds of offensive guys. And so you can't have perfect guys on a 13-man roster all the time. You just got to, Jerod said it, as a coach, you got to put people in the right positions to succeed. And Archie's going to have to figure out what that means for Justin. Was it a 3, the 4, scoring, not scoring? But he's a guy you use. When he's going well, you use him. And
I don't know how you motivate him though too. I mean, that's another question too. When he isn't getting it going, how do you get him going? You can't use the bench because I don't think that works with him. I think he gets down on himself more but
it works for the team. No. If you're engaged, you're going to help the team. If you're not engaged, if it doesn't work for you, I don't care. We need someone who is engaged in the game.
Oh, you definitely sub him out.
Yeah, but and he's just, you got to play outside your personality. When you cross that red line that's around the court in Assembly Hall, you've got to fight your personality, and you just got to keep talking to a young man like that. Fight your personality. You're not fighting your personality. There you go. You're going to have to sit, and it either clicks or it doesn't click. And so far this year, it's been a lot better overall. But I just think he needs to play the 4.
Well, I know. I mean, I think Indiana's best lineups are probably there. I don't know that is his preference, but he's also going to have to do it. I mean, back to the question, what will it take to get them over the hump in terms of consistency? I mean, I think for Justin, if having a roster full of guys behind him that can take those minutes doesn't work, I don't know what will. And look, we say all this on the heels of him playing overall 3 really good games. Like, he's been better this year. He's showing signs, like that episode that we had 4 or 5 weeks ago where it's like, which path is he taking? Is he going down the Charlie Miller path, or is he going down the Daryl Thomas path, of guys that really got better their last couple of years? So far, he's taken the good path. So hopefully that continues. But, I think if having Race and Jerome and all these capable guys to take his minutes doesn't do it, nothing will. I mean, if you're a player and the bench doesn't motivate you, that's kind of seems like it's got to be the ultimate motivator if you're able to be motivated.
Okay, so here's my point where he's best, and again, I will always defer to Archie, but if he's playing 24 minutes at the 3, we are going to have 3 players on the court that can't shoot threes.
Yeah.
And so then it's Devonte and Rob, and that does not stretch the floor. And you can say he's better there, and he likes to play there, and he wants to play there, and you want to get your best players in at the 4 and the 5, but you have 60% of your offense that cannot shoot threes. You get Jerome out there, you get L at the 3. I like a combination of L and Jerome at the 3. You could throw Demezi in when you don't need defense, you just need points. You can throw Demezi in, and he can shoot the 3, and he can play that 3. But now you got 2 spots and only 20 minutes or 40 minutes a game to find shooters.
Yeah.
And again, I will always defer and cheer for the coach and cheer for Indiana no matter what. I'm just that kind of guy. But that's my one situation where he can screen, pop out, drive, and maybe have a better offense even against a defending 4.
And it's also, I mean, you kind of, as a coach, you have to sell that to the guy. Hey, your life is going to be easier offensively if you're out there with 3 shooters. There's going to be more openings for you, So
I mean, he's been trying the 3. I mean, at least he's been trying to put himself out there in these games that when he can. But yeah, I mean, if we try to, like Coach said, put him at the 3, it's just going to be a nightmare like last year. Teams are going to sag off of him and wait for him to drive.
Yeah. Also, Phil asked, has Joey Brunk been a disappointment, or are they limiting his minutes during the early season? So the way that I would answer this is I think Joey Brunk, to me, he's only been a disappointment if your expectations were too high based on what he had been at Butler. And maybe that is the fault of, podcasts and media that got overly excited about his commitment. But I don't really think so, because I think his commitment was an important one, and some of the things that everybody talked about him bringing, the leadership and the toughness and all those things, he's brought that stuff. It's just when the games start, you don't necessarily see it in the box score. And I think, Coach, to the point you made on the postgame show, they were really doing some things with hedging ball screens, and he was, either he was getting out of position or they were putting him in positions to not look very good. But we haven't really seen him make a huge impact on offense, but we haven't really seen any of the post guys make a huge impact on offense. Otherwise, to me, he's been the guy that he was at Butler, and I think he's played tough. I think he's played hard, and I think he's done some of the things that you expected. So, no, to me, he hasn't been a disappointment. He's been, for the most part, what I thought he would be and that I think he will be. And I don't see him as a guy that's going to be playing 20 plus minutes. I think I like him as a starter. I think he brings you good toughness to start a game, good leadership to start a game, and then you pick your spots with him from there. But to me, he hasn't been a disappointment.
Man, the chat mob is perfectly on this one, Jerod. Joey Brunk was brought in not to get stats and not to be a KenPom superstar. Joey Brunk was brought in to bring toughness to the program. Archie was not happy with the competitiveness and toughness of a talented group last year to overcome some adversity. Joey Brunk was come in, and he has been dominating that locker room. He was not known as a good defender at Butler, not known as a good rebounder. I really like his effort defensively. His technique, not so much. I really like his effort going after rebounds. He's not explosive. He's not getting up off the ground above the rim type of rebounder, but he will give everything because he loves wearing the Indiana uniform and the candy stripes. And that is what this program has needed. And so Joey Brunk will go down, not for any stats or not for anything visually pleasing, but he is needed out there for 12 to 18 minutes to be that guy to make sure Indiana's playing the right way, at least effort and hustle wise. And I don't think there's been any question of Indiana basketball effort, attitude, anything. It's just been technique that has been poor in some areas, I think, for the most part. And I think that's Joey's thing. And Joey Brunk's Joey Brunk. And you just got to love him for, that junkyard mentality.
Chad, are you on board with that too?
Yeah, I mean that gave me the biggest hope in the postseason was hearing that story that we all heard of them playing a little pickup ball with each other and everything, and the guys kind of started to kind of dwindle, and one guy was headed towards the door at the end of it, and Joey ran across and closed the door and said, "No, we didn't go hard enough, we didn't go long enough, and we didn't go long enough. We're going to keep playing." So that's the kind of thing you're seeing from him, and you're seeing that help of that culture change and where the program is headed back in the right area. And I have to say, stuff and things in the chat said it great too. We'd love to just see him wear out Matt Harms, and that's enough for him.
Yes, definitely wear out Matt Harms. That'd be great. I'm going to do that after a post-game show sometime. Just, hey, this wasn't good enough. We're staying here. We're doing it again. We're running it back.
Jerod, and this is a good point too. And Joel says the whole show and no mention of race. So I'll Joel. Yeah, that's race to me.
We mentioned race.
He needs to play more minutes.
Yeah, I agree.
I'll just bring that up. I think Race has earned more minutes. And again, not being overly critical, but man, if you play that hard and you rebound like that, I don't know how many. I tried to divide up the minutes the other day. There's a discussion in the chat room about how many minutes the guards would play. And boy, it's not easy when you got 11 players. And you want your better players around 28 to 34 minutes because they're your best players. But if you do that, the other guys don't get a whole lot. It's not easy to divide that up. But, boy, I like Race a lot. And I think once he learns how to guard the bounce, then he'll be able to even play even more.
I like Joel's filling in for Ryan tonight where he's not listening or paying attention to the show. We talked about Race. There have been a few
Joel's probably had
a
couple bourbons.
Yeah. Come on, Joel. he and Steph and things are in there going back and forth a little bit. Okay. So we probably should have hit this before, but I think this is a good question from Patrick. Justin Smith's effort gets discussed here often, and rightly so. Can you talk about the difference between engaged and production with Justin? Well, he may not have been productive last game. After rewatching, he was engaged thoroughly, active hands, feet moving on defense, blocking out, etc. And I agree with that. Like I kind of felt we were pretty harsh against Al and Justin, I thought, on the post-game show. Some of it I thought was warranted, and some of it I thought, upon reflection and kind of restudying it, maybe we were a little bit too harsh on those guys. I always try and kind of reflect and see what we did right, what we got wrong. But I think he makes a good point about Justin here. And it sounds like you saw the same thing, Coach.
Yeah. We as fans look at the box score, that production, and there are different ways you can be productive as a basketball player without filling the box score. And you add that to expectation of Justin being one of our leading scorer. Without Devonte in, he doesn't take but 2 or 3 shots, only scores 3 or 4 or 5 points, and you think it's a bad game. But when you went back and looked at it, he was, I thought, engaged. There weren't a lot of those moments where he was just aloof on the court. I did think there were a few more than in game 1 and game 2 in the exhibitions. But it wasn't one of those where I would say that, okay, he was, where everyone got mad last year and Justin shouldn't be playing type of games. So, yeah, it's tough sometimes when the box score numbers aren't there. I think that immediate reaction, watching it live and then looking at the box score, we all do that. And so I think I agree that Justin was engaged. He just didn't have the production.
And it's important for him, and it's important for an older guy that the floor performance for you raises. Like everybody's going to have some bad games, and I think North Alabama was a bad game for junior year Justin Smith, but it showed growth because his bad games before, man, you're just like, oh my goodness, and so I think that in and of itself shows some improvement from him, and that's what we're looking for from these guys. You're not expecting perfection, but that's what's rewarding about being a fan is you just see guys grow and get a little bit better, and you just see that steady improvement, and I think we're seeing that from him.
Well, the bar is set really high for Justin. I mean, we all as fans have seen his potential for a long time, and we've been excited and been wanting so desperately to see him do well. And I think part of that reaction to this past game is the fact that he came out this season pretty hot and doing a lot of great things. And so we're excited for what could be and can be and has been a little bit this season already with him. So a slump on the stat sheet on one game has us rolling our eyes again and frustrated. But we have to, like we have drilled here, he look off of that and look and see what he's doing that's not showing up in the numbers.
Let me ask you guys this quick question. Sorry to jump in here, but when you watch a game, are you guilty, as I am guilty, that you want the game over in the first 4 minutes and you want absolute perfect basketball? And at the 8-minute mark or the 10-minute mark and you're only up 3 against North Alabama, you're like, oh my gosh, here we go again. And that's why I stay off Twitter, because I don't want to comment after first 10 minutes, but my heart is racing like, oh, what's the post-game show going to be like, if we get beat by North Alabama? And that negative narrative football narrative starting to creep in with basketball as well. And then I say, take a deep breath, be patient. Next thing you know, we win by 26. And it's a D1. I know it's not that great.
To be fair, for the North Alabama game, though, yes, sometimes it's warranted, sometimes it's not. For the North Alabama game, I think it was warranted because it kind of matched how the coach was viewing it, too. And, something had to happen for it to change. But, yes, to your point, I do. And part of that is I think it got worse last year, because how we were conditioned last year, where they would just come out for those final 2 months so flat, and it's like, oh God, here we go again. It's 19-0 to Michigan, so you kind of start to judge it a little bit early on. Hopefully we can get I think when you trust your team and you trust your coach, you don't react like that. But we're trying to build that trust with the program right now, and to your point, it's the negative football narrative is there a little bit right now because bad things have been happening.
I watch every other game as a coach. Then when I watch IU, I'm a fan. And by the 8-minute mark, I'm throwing stuff and I'm ticked and I'm saying bad language. My wife's slamming the door to shut me down.
He ought to be fired.
Yeah. And I get mad when I do that. But I mean, maybe that's just the way fans are. I don't know.
I fall into the problem of that. I get into that trap at the beginning, and then I lose track of the score. I don't know if I'm not paying attention to the score or something like that. And it happened in the North Alabama game in the second half. Then I suddenly looked up and I was concerned about how this play went or how that play went. And then I looked at the score and oh, we're up by 20. Oh, okay. Well, things are all right. We're experimenting those things. But yeah, I mean, we are fans. We hoot and holler and scream. I remember as a kid, my dad watching games and our dog used to hide under the bed in my parents' bedroom, because he knew right away. And even my dog used to do that. When I'd watch it, he'd stand in the kitchen. He'd kind of look kind of scary-eyed at me. I don't know if I'm looking more intense than I normally do at the TV watching the games. It's how we are as fans, I think.
I have gotten better over the years, though. I used to be horrible in game, screaming and yelling.
Oh, me. Hosting the show has changed how I watch games. Because taking notes and trying to keep it in some kind of perspective. It's because it's 2 hours of preparing to do a show immediately after. That's changed. But then, of course, sometimes you get halftime reports like last game where it's basically just raw fan emotion for 8 minutes. But, sometimes the play warrants that. Okay, we got a few more to hit here. From Max, when we played in tight games last year in crunch time, the ball was obviously going to Romeo, Juwan, and at times Devonte. Do you think we will establish a few go-to players, or will it be more democratic? Is this going to keep opposing defenses honest, or is there a worry that we won't be decisive enough, leading to bad looks late in shot clock? Look, I think this is a concern that I have about this team, and we're going to have to see how it develops. We covered this a little bit earlier that I think Devonte is going to be, your go-to guy when you need a guy to go get a shot. I think Jerome can also be that guy because he has a high enough release and is tall enough. He can get his shot in a lot of different situations, and he can do it inside and out. Outside of that, I think, someone mentioned earlier that Rob is the best playmaker, and he is, but that's getting a shot for another guy. Rob's not always going to be able to get his own shot. And Rob doesn't have the same kind of wiggle that Devonte does. So if there's the constraint of a shot clock on Rob, he's a little bit less effective than when he's got time to probe a defense and kind of do what he wants to do. And so, I think that having some inside out actions, doing some of that's going to help. The other guy that I think could factor in here, and it's probably one of the most improved single skills that I've noticed, is Al Durham's ability to shoot coming off screens or shoot when he's on the move. That, I think, is something else that Indiana can do to help get a shot in a tough situation. So, to me, that's what you're looking for, is you throw it to Devonte, you put Jerome in a good position, to go get a shot, or you set up some screens for Al, and essentially you have Rob kind of facilitate that. But Rob's going to be more a guy like we saw last year that I think is going to get his big shots when you go inside out. He just doesn't create shots as well for himself as those other guys. So that's how I see it kind of shaking out. I'm worried about it, though. I think it's going to be a problem for this team. What else? Do you agree with those, Coach? And are there any other areas that you see?
I would be interested to see, Durham's been doing a good job of getting downhill. Can he do that against better teams? So late shot clock, can you get him the ball on the wing against a closeout and then have him go drive? I don't see him, pulling it out, calling for a ball screen up at the top like you see in college basketball all the time. But maybe you can, have some your work in motion, and then at 6 you have a call and you get it to someone, and they just go and try to get to the foul line. I have a lot of faith. As much as we were upset with Al defensively, his offensive game, I think, is here to stay. And I think he's going to have to get minutes, bad defensively or not, because of the need for shooting and the need for points. So I would say I would follow what you said and then just say maybe they'll design some actions in late shot clock situations for Al.
All right. I feel like it could be situational too. I mean, I think the depth that we have, I could see that if the matchup is right underneath, I could see it going to Trace, some sort of action to him underneath. I like an idea where there's might be two options. Maybe there's an option down for Trace, and there's Al coming off of Al or Green coming off of screens, and I have the ball in Rob's hands, and he's making the decision on the play, what the defense is giving us, which one he goes to, which one is the better option within those. So I kind of like Rob making that decision.
Yeah, and to the point that some people are making in the chat, I don't mean to say that Rob's not going to be a guy to take big shots. He is. He takes them and he makes them. But, as Eric said, it wasn't Rob's biggest shot when the play for Romeo broke down and they got it to Rob. Yes, that's what I mean. Like, Rob's going to get his shots, not creating them for himself. I think a play or an inside out or something breaking down where it's a scramble and then Rob gets a shot. That's where he got a lot of them last year, and I think we'll see that. Again, I'll tell you, the other thing where I think we get offense in these situations is crashing the hell out of the offensive glass and rebounding a missed shot. I think that is also another place where we can get offense in these situations because Trace is going to be good at it. Justin's going to be good at it. Race will be good at it. So these guys that can't create shot and you're not going to set anything up for them, go crash the glass. And now if you're getting 35, 40% of those rebounds back off the misses, that's going to help you, again, the shot volume that we've talked about.
I will say this about Rob, because I do agree with you. Usually you want a guy attacking the rim that has length. That's the Romeo, that's the Jerome. And so Rob attacking, can he get a shot off late shot clock where it's going to be contested? He's got a nice hop back shot game.
He does.
And that could be a late shot clock too, where you put him in a ball screen or you isolate him and he drives hard and he can hop back and shot fake, get fouled or shoot. So, there's some things that might not be atypical. You usually put the ball in your point guard's hand and call for a ball screen and see what happens. But Archie may have to get creative. But that's where Rob would fit in that late game. But that's where normally Jerome and L and Devonte with more of a little waggle to their games and downhill games you would go to. But don't sell short. Rob keeps impressing me. Yeah. I didn't think he was going to be ready until Christmas time last year. He came out from the start. He guards. Once he gets his handle back, the turnovers will drop. I just really think that's an unsung college hero that no one's looking at, that is going to be at the end of his 4 years something spectacular that we're really going to miss after he goes. I just really like his demeanor, his attitude. And so, sometimes you don't have the skills to get that shot off late, but you have the fight, and he'll find his way to get something done. You might see that as well.
Well said. And finally, Scott has a player comp here. He says, hey, Ryan, although Ryan's not on the show, although Jerome is a bit bigger from the little we've seen, player comp Maurice Creek. I'm not really seeing the Maurice Creek player comp. I mean, in terms of a guy that can step out and make shots and has kind of an assassin's mentality as a shooter, I think we're seeing some of that from Jerome, and we certainly saw that from Maurice. But I think, Jerome's ability to go in the post and some of his versatility, it's some of the other things I don't really see a whole lot of comparison there. And, dear Lord, in terms of, availability for his career, let's hope that, there's not a comparison there. So I can kind of see where you might go with that one, but that's not a player comp that I would really buy into.
He's going to be a guy that's going to be able to, and we've seen it a little bit, like you said, we haven't seen many players at IU that can possibly or should be able to shoot it at three so much, and then that are great backing up players in the post. And he shows that he likes to do that. And if he's on the three and he's backing up another three on another team, that's going to be an easy basket for him each time. So, I don't know who I would comp him with, honestly.
We just haven't seen him enough, like there are shades of Brian Evans in his game. There are things he does that reminds me of Brian Evans. Again, none of these player comps are perfect. And then I think he's a really unique player, actually. That's the thing. Like I love the skill set that he brings. And so if we can just see it fully developed and fully healthy, I think we're going to see something really special in him, which is what everybody was telling us before last season. So, I'm excited about him. All right. Great questions, everybody. Thank you for sending all those questions in.
No, wait. Except for Jay's. His was mediocre.
Oh, well, yeah. That question sucks,
iffy.
Yeah, Jeff said Christian Watford. Christian Watford's another good comp for Jerome.
Not bad.
Yeah, that is a good one. I don't know that Christian necessarily had the back to the basket game that it seems like Jerome has, but again, there's no perfect player comps. I think you start combining all those, but when you start mentioning names like Brian Evans and Christian Watford and Maurice Creek, it shows you the kind of offensive talent we're talking about with Jerome Hunter, because he's reminding people of some of the most talented offensive players we've seen. So that's a good thing.
Does he just not look like a basketball player when he's out there? Just the way his uniform hangs on him, his length, it's just like.
And his mentality.
Come on, get up to speed, dude. We need you.
It's smooth. It's a smooth game that he plays. It's effortless.
Yeah. It's kind of like me with Oreos. Smooth.
Double stuffed?
Right. Yeah, of course.
Joel threw out Scott May. That's what I mean. Like we're starting to name some pretty good names here.
That's the backup part.
I don't think any of them are ridiculous.
No, Clayton, sorry, you had a good comment earlier, but Penny Hardaway, Jerome doesn't cheat. So you can't comp him to Penny Hardaway.
Man, if they don't suspend him for 9 games or something comparable to what the other guy got 12,000 for something and he ended up getting 9 games. He's not going to. He's too much of a marquee player. NCAA is going to get
Penny's going to hire Little Penny to be on his coaching staff.
That'd be hilarious. They do need to bring him out. Man. Their social media people are missing out on something.
Gosh. All right, everybody. So post-game show Saturday. Coach, you're going to be at the game. I am probably not going to be available, so I think it's going to be Andy and Ryan doing that one. But if Andy's having internet issues, then I may have to pop on.
And what kind of guy has internet issues?
Yeah, no kidding. No kidding.
Hey, it's been good since, Coach. So that reset.
Yeah, it actually has. It has. So maybe
I told Mrs. Tonsoni to get off her computer. I put her on a no computer zone upstairs.
Maybe you're just a guy that doesn't warm up well, but when the green light flashes and it's go time, you and your internet are ready to roll. So yeah, sweet. Enjoy the rest of your night, your Friday, and to everybody who's going to the Hoosier Hysterics event, have an awesome time. Send pictures.
Lucky dogs.
Let them know that the Assembly Call folks are there in spirit. Wish we could be there in person.
How long is that event? When's that event get over?
I don't know. I mean, I would imagine it'll be going on for at least a couple of hours. And, my guess is that there will be people hanging around for a while because they're going to start watching the IU Penn State game there.
Yeah.
So, I would if you can get in town by like 2 or 3, I would go.
People are saying 3 hours in the chat.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, try to go. I mean, I
don't know if I'm going right away and watch. I can't get down there till about 12:30 or 1 and go watch the football game somewhere, or stay home, watch the football game, and then go to Bloomington.
You're gonna
tough decisions.
Indiana upsets Penn State. You're gonna want to be in Bloomington to celebrate with everybody.
I might go jump on the goalpost if they beat.
As well, you should.
You need to go, Coach. As two guys, Jerod and I, that can't just get in a car and get to Bloomington.
Yeah.
You need to go.
Headlines in the Bloomington paper. Assembly Call co-host arrested inside Memorial Stadium for hanging on the goalpost, yelling, "Hey, Jerod!"
Just make sure you
claim him.
Just wear your shirt.
Best. That would be so great. We would frame that and put it right here.
It's the new T-shirt. Send that to Home Field right away.
Oh yeah, Home Field. Tonsoni hanging on.
Tonsoni on there.
Yeah. With the big X for being arrested.
Oh man.
Can we get an Assembly Call Speedo made on the hurry? Can we?
No, because Joel in the chat mob will buy one for his trips to South Carolina, and we don't want to do that.
Okay, this has got to be the most off the rails Assembly Call after dark when we're talking about the
chat mob members.
Tonsoni tailgate crew wearing Speedos. Oh boy. Kent said, "Coach, you'd get a new song if that's the case." Yes, you most certainly would. Yep. You most certainly would. All right, everybody, time to go get this thing posted.
Good night, everyone.
Yep, we will talk to you. Big day on Saturday for IU fans, so have fun. Send us pictures, and we'll talk to you on the postgame show.
See you.
You guys. Chad, awesome job, man. Thanks,
Chad.
Yeah.
We'll see you.